There's a version of you that no longer exists. You know the one, the person you were before it happened. Before the phone call, before the hospital room, before the moment the world rearranged itself without your permission. You remember what that person laughed like, what they worried about, what they took for granted. And sometimes, in a quiet moment, maybe late at night, you catch yourself missing that person. Not just the one you lost, yourself. You sit with old friends now, and you smile at the right moments. You say the right things, but there's a distance you can't explain. They're talking about something that used to matter to you, and you're watching from somewhere slightly behind your own eyes. You're in the room, you're not quite there. There are people in your life who knew you before, and sometimes they look at you like they're waiting for the old version to come back, like this is a phase, like grief has a checkout time. But you know something they don't. That person isn't coming back, and you're not sure whether to mourn that or accept it, or whether those are even different things. People will tell you grief is about the person you lost. They'll say, give it time. You'll feel like yourself again. They would want you to be happy. And they mean it kindly. They do. But that's not the full truth. Sometimes grief isn't only about who you lost. Sometimes it's about who you lost with them. Because that person, the you from before, was built partly around their presence, their voice in your head, their place at the table, their being in the world as proof that the world made sense. And when they left, something in your architecture shifted. Psychologists Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun spent years studying what happens to people after devastating loss. What they discovered surprised them. They found that trauma doesn't just wound people, it can fundamentally rebuild them. They called this post-traumatic growth, and they found it not in spite of the shattering, but because of it. What if the change you're feeling isn't damage? What if it's the beginning of something you don't have a word for yet? You notice it in the strangest places. Someone makes a joke the way they used to make jokes, and the laugh rises in you and then stops. Not because it isn't funny, because something between the funny and the laughing is different now. There's an extra step, a moment of translation. Your chest holds things differently. Music you used to love hits at a different register now. Certain words carry more weight. Certain silences are louder. You move through ordinary days, and ordinary days feel vaguely foreign. Not unbearable, not always, just not quite yours. You catch yourself being gentle with strangers in ways you weren't before, impatient with things that used to feel important, drawn to depth in conversations, allergic to small talk in a way you can't fully justify. You have become someone who knows something, and knowing it changed the prescription on the glasses you see everything through. This started the moment you understood it was real, not when you were told, not even at the funeral necessarily, but the moment your body processed it. That specific cellular level, knowing that a presence had left the world. The brain has a model of reality, a quiet map it runs in the background. Who will be there tomorrow? What's stable? What can be assumed? And your person was written into that map, not as a thought you had, as a given. Psychologist Ronnie Janoff Bullman spent decades researching what she called our assumptive world. The invisible set of beliefs we carry about how life works. The world is fair. Good things come to people who try. The people I love will be here tomorrow. These aren't conclusions we reach. They're foundations we stand on without knowing we're standing on them. When someone dies, those foundations shake. Sometimes they crack, and you don't rebuild the same structure on cracked ground. You build differently, smaller in some places, taller in others, more honest about what holds and what doesn't. The you from before was built on different ground. That's not a flaw, that's physics. Here is why this isn't weakness. Here is why this is biology. The brain is a prediction machine. Its primary job isn't to process the present. It's to anticipate the future using everything it learned from the past. And grief, real grief, is a prediction error at the deepest level. Neuroscientists studying bereavement have found that the brain continues seeking the lost person long after the loss. The regions associated with social reward, with attachment, with the sense of someone's presence. They don't simply switch off, they fire and then find nothing. And that mismatch between expecting and not finding is neurologically disorienting. Your brain is trying to update its model of reality, and reality has a new variable it never had to account for before: permanent absence. That rewiring takes time, it takes enormous energy, and it changes things. Tedeschi and Calhoun found that estimates suggest half to 2/3 of people who experience serious loss may go through meaningful psychological transformation. Not despite the loss, but because the loss forced them to reconstruct how they understand themselves and the world. You're not broken, you're recalibrating. After an earthquake, you don't criticize the land for looking different. We live in a world that treats grief like a temporary inconvenience. There are bereavement days, sympathy cards with timelines built in. How are you doing? Means, tell me you're okay. And I'm okay is what you say, because the alternative, the honest answer, makes people uncomfortable. Our ancestors lived in communities built around collective mourning. Loss was witnessed, held by the group, named in ritual. Now, you're expected to log back into work within the week, to perform recovery, to reassure everyone else that you're fine, to be grateful for the support you received, and then put it quietly away. But grief doesn't file itself when you're done with it. It files you, and the person it places in the drawer is different from the person who went in. Here is the part that carries the most weight. Behind every "I'm fine" is a grief you haven't shown anyone. Not for them, for you. There is a particular kind of loneliness in grieving your own former self. No one brings flowers for that. No one checks in about it, because no one can see it from the outside. You smile, you function. You've built a life around this new version of yourself. And sometimes you resent people who never had to. People who still laugh easily, who don't carry the knowing you carry, who get to be light. And then you feel guilty for resenting them. And then you miss the version of you who would have been light too. Not broken, not damaged, but different, permanently, quietly. In ways only you feel the edges of at 3 a.m. That grief is real. It deserves a name. When you understand that the person you became isn't a broken version of who you were, something shifts. Not immediately, not completely, but something. Because here's what's actually true about you now. You carry a kind of wisdom that can't be taught. It can only be lived. You know, not intellectually, but in your cells. That time is not guaranteed. That presence is not permanent. That the ordinary afternoon with someone you love is not ordinary at all. It never was. You just know it now. That knowing changes how you love. Quietly it does. You might find yourself more patient with people who are suffering. Not because you chose patience, because you can't unknow what suffering actually is. You've been inside it. You might find yourself less willing to spend time in rooms that feel hollow. Less able to pretend things matter that don't. Not because you're difficult, because something in you got permanently recalibrated toward what's real. Maybe there are relationships that feel different now. Some that grew closer through loss. Some that couldn't hold the weight of who you became. Both of those things make sense. People who knew the old you, they loved the old you. And sometimes love has trouble updating. That's not their failure. And it's not your flaw. You're not asking permission to be different. You already are. What you're learning, slowly, is that who you became deserves the same grace you give to who you were. Not because change is comfortable, because change, in this case, was honest. You didn't choose to become this person, but this person is real, and real is worth more than easy. Remember that distance you feel in rooms full of people who knew you before? It used to mean something was wrong. Maybe it means something different now. Maybe it means you are carrying something they haven't had to carry yet. And that weight, that depth, is not a wound. It's a different kind of seeing. The old you was not lesser. The old you was whole in a different way, before the knowing, before the ground moved. And this you is whole too. Not the same whole, a more complicated one. You're not going back. That's not loss anymore. That's just true. And in the truth of it, there's something unexpected. There's room. Room to grieve the old self without having to become them again. Room to honour who you were and still live as who you are. Room to love people from this new place. Not despite the distance, but with it. You didn't survive loss by going back. You survived it by becoming someone who could carry it forward. That's not broken. That's not even tragedy. That's a very particular kind of courage. You became someone else. That's true. And the someone else, the one standing here now, is not less whole, not less worthy, not less real. You're not the person you were before. You're the person who learned what before actually cost. The one who knows the weight of ordinary days. The one who loves differently, not worse, differently. There is grief in that. There is also something quiet and irreversible that lives in your chest now. Not pain exactly, not peace exactly. Something between the two. Call it knowing, call it depth, call it you. The loss changed you. You changed into someone who can hold it. That's not an accident. You didn't just survive losing them. You survived losing who you were with them.